The Sultan Who Became an Exile. A sultan of Egypt, it is related, called a conference of learned men, and very soon, as is usually the case, a dispute arose. The subject was the night journey of the Prophet Mohammed. It is said that on that occasion the Prophet was taken from his bed up into the celestial spheres. During this period he saw paradise and hell, conferred with God 90,000 times, and had many other experiences, and was returned to his room while his bed was yet warm. A pot of water which had been overturned by the flight and spilled was still not empty when the Prophet returned. Some held that this was possible by a different measurement of time. The Sultan claimed that it was impossible. The sages said that all things were possible by divine power. This did not satisfy the king. The news of this conflict came at length to the Sufi Sheikh Shahabuddin, who immediately presented himself at court. The Sultan showed due humility to the teacher, who said, "I intend to proceed without further delay to my demonstration. For know now that both the interpretations of the problem are incorrect, and that there are demonstrable factors which can account for tradition without the need to resort to crude speculation or insipid and uninformed logicality." There were 4 windows in the audience chamber. The Sheikh ordered one to be opened. The Sultan looked out of it. On a mountain beyond he saw an invading army, a myriad, bearing down on the palace. He was terribly afraid. "Pray forget it, for it is nothing," said the Sheikh. He shut the window and opened it again. This time there was not a soul to be seen. When he opened another of the windows, the city outside was seen to be consumed by flames. The Sultan cried out in alarm. "Do not distress yourself, Sultan, for it is nothing," said the Sheikh. When he had closed and again opened the window, there was no fire to be seen. The third window being opened revealed a flood approaching the palace. Then again there was no flood. When the 4th window was opened, instead of the customary desert, a garden of paradise was revealed. And then, by the shutting of the window, the scene vanished as before. Now the Sheikh ordered a vessel of water to be brought, and the Sultan to put his head into it for a moment. As soon as he had done so, the Sultan found himself alone on a deserted seashore, a place which he did not know. At this magic spell of the treacherous Sheikh he was transported with fury, and vowed vengeance. Soon he met some woodcutters, who asked him who he was. Unable to explain his true state, he told them that he was shipwrecked. They gave him some clothes, and he walked to a town where a blacksmith, seeing him aimlessly wandering, asked him who he was. "A shipwrecked merchant, dependent upon the charity of woodcutters, now with no resources," answered the Sultan. The man then told him about a custom of that country. All newcomers could ask the first woman who left the bathhouse to marry him, and she would be obliged to do so. He went to the bath, and saw a beautiful maiden leaving. He asked her if she was married already, and she was. So he had to ask the next, an ugly one, and the next. The 4th was really exquisite. She said that she was not married, but pushed past him, affronted by his miserable appearance and dress. Suddenly a man stood before him and said, "I have been sent to find a bedraggled man here. Please, follow me." The Sultan followed the servant, and was shown into a wonderful house, in one of whose sumptuous apartments he sat for hours. Finally 4 beautiful and gorgeously attired women came in, preceding a 5th, even more beautiful. She the Sultan recognized as the last woman whom he had approached at the bathhouse. She welcomed him and explained that she had hurried home to prepare for his coming, and that her hauteur was only one of the customs of the country, practiced by all women in the street. Then followed a magnificent meal. Wonderful robes were brought and given to the Sultan, while delicate music was played. The Sultan stayed 7 years with his new wife, until they had squandered all her patrimony. Then the woman told him that he must now provide for her and their 7 sons. Recalling his first friend in the city, the Sultan returned to the blacksmith for counsel. Since the Sultan had no trade or training, he was advised to go to the marketplace and offer his services as a porter. In one day he earned, through carrying a terrible load, only 1/10 of the money which was needed for the food of the family. The following day the Sultan made his way to the seashore again, where he found the very spot from which he had emerged 7 long years before. Deciding to say his prayers, he started to wash in the water, when he suddenly and dramatically found himself back at the palace, with the vessel of water, the sheikh, and his courtiers.
7 years of exile, evil man, roared the Sultan. 7 years, a family, and having to be a porter? Have you no fear of God, the Almighty, for this deed?
But it is only a moment, said the Sufi master, since you put your head into this water. His courtiers bore out this statement. The Sultan could not possibly bring himself to believe a word of this. He started to give the order for the beheading of the sheikh. Perceiving by inner sense that this was to happen, the sheikh exercised the capacity called Ilm el-Ghaibat, the science of absence. This caused him to be instantly and corporeally transported to Damascus, many days' distance away. From here he wrote a letter to the king. 7 years passed for you, as you will now have discovered, during an instant of your head in the water. This happens through the exercise of certain faculties, and carries no special significance except that it is illustrative of what can happen. Was not the bed warm? Was not the water jar not yet empty in this tradition? It is not whether a thing has happened or not which is the important element. It is possible for anything to happen. What is, however, important is the significance of the happening. In your case, there was no significance. In the case of the Prophet, there was significance in the happening.